Nothing But the Truth. Hello, I'm Raj Chengap of India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. This is my weekly x-ray of key issues that matter to you without holding back on the truth. In this episode, we will talk about the dark versus fair complexion debate that has been reignited and is currently raging across the country. It will deal with the ugly and shameful prejudice that Indians seem to harbor against darker skin tones, and it is very, very real, it's very personal, and sadly, it is still happening every day. So let's go deeper into the issue and examine why there is such an intrinsic skin color bias amongst us and what we need to do about it. The most recent example of this disgraceful bias happened to Sharada Muralidharan, who is a serving IAS officer and is currently Chief Secretary of Kerala. She took over this important post from her husband V. Venu in September last year. And recently, in a very moving Facebook post, Sharada recounted her agony, which began with someone making an insulting and hurtful comment about her skin color. This is what Sharada wrote, and I'm quoting it verbatim. Heard an interesting comment yesterday on my stewardship as Chief Secretary that it is as black as my husband's was white. Then she goes on to add, why did I want to call this particular one out? I was hurt, yes. But then these last 7 months have been a relentless parade of comparisons with my predecessor, and I've become quite inured. It was about being labeled black with that quiet subtext of being a woman, as if that were something to be desperately ashamed of. Black is as black does. Not just black the color, but black the never do good, black the malaise, the cold despotism, and the heart of darkness. But why should black be vilified? Black is the all-pervasive truth of the universe. Black is that which can absorb anything, the most powerful pulse of energy known to humankind. It is the color that works on everyone, the dress code for office, the luster of evening wear, the essence of kajol, the promise of rain. As a 4-year-old, I apparently asked my mother whether she could put me back in her womb and bring me out again all white and pretty. I've lived for over 50 years buried under that narrative of not being a color that was good enough, and buying into that narrative of not seeing beauty or value in black, of being fascinated by fair skin and fair minds and all that was fair and good and wholesome, and of feeling that I was a lesser person for not being that which had to be compensated somehow. Now, these words stunned the country, and many of those who suffered similar deprivations spoke out their deepest angst. Among them was Kani Kusruti, who left, if you recall, a lasting impression with a performance in Payal Kapadia's All We Imagine as Light, the first Indian film to win a Grand Prix award at Cannes. Soon after Sharada spoke up, Kani wrote an impassioned column in a leading daily of how, even as a child, her relatives asked her to wear only light-colored clothes because, as they said, if you wear black or any other shade, we can't see you. She went on to add, there is a hierarchy of color, especially for women and girls, and therefore of beauty. In another instance, model and actress Poulami Das recounted how she was on the verge of bagging a lead role in a television show, only to learn that the channel had rejected her on grounds of her skin color. Ironically, 5 years ago, Das was the face of Glow and Lovely, the new name for India's most famous skin whitening cream, the cream brand that was called Fair and Lovely earlier. Now, after worldwide protests, including the Black Lives Matter movement, Hindustan Unilever replaced the word fair with glow in 2020 to make it Glow and Lovely. Yet, despite the condemnation the skin lightening market continues to boom in India. It is now worth $1.5 billion or close to rupees 12,800 crore, with the overall market growing at an annual average of 7%. Meanwhile, despite growing awareness, matrimonial ads continue to push for light-skinned brides. A recent survey of such ads showed that over 60% of Indian men preferred fair-skinned women, 60%. Colorism prevails in our workspaces as well. That bias is most visible in the appearance-focused industries such as tourism and hospitality, aviation, retail, media, and entertainment. Also, Hindi films are replete with examples of dark-skinned women being cast in tertiary and stereotypical roles. Seldom do you find them as leading ladies or even heroes in an industry dominated by fair-skinned heroines and heroes. India Today spoke to Radhika Parameshwaran, a professor at the Media School at Indiana University in the US, who has done extensive research on colorism in India, and what she said was truly revealing. Radhika told us, and I'm quoting her, the fetish for light skin has magnified in India in the past 2 decades, especially with the explosion of social media. So rather than diminishing, it has magnified, she says, in the past 2 decades. All other factors being equal, she went on to say, a light-skinned person is likely to be favored for a work opportunity. Now listen to that carefully. A light-skinned person is likely to be favored for a work opportunity. So it is obvious that color biases against dark-complexioned individuals is widely prevalent across the country. So let's briefly examine the reasons why this has happened. Some scholars, like Dr. Vivek Kumar, a JNU sociologist whom India Today spoke to, pointed out a very interesting fact. He said our gods, Vishnu, Shiva, Ram, Krishna, are all portrayed as dark-skinned. Draupadi, the beautiful queen of the Mahabharata, is dark-skinned too. So why did Indians then develop a fetish for fair skins? Vivek Kumar traces that bias to when the first fair-skinned Indo-Aryans encountered the dark-skinned Dravidians, the original inhabitants of India, and then began to rule over the people and designated themselves as nobility. Controversial point, but this is something he talks about, but he makes it clear, Vivek makes it clear, that the modern day obsession with colorism came because of the colonial powers, particularly the British, who ruled India longer than the others did. So our association of beauty with white skin is then the curse left by our European colonial rulers. By the time the British left, colorism had taken firm root in the Indian psyche. Women came to bear a disproportionate brunt of this unfair burden, as caste patriarchy and economic status combined to create a sense of inferiority, let's put it, on those who were dark complexioned. Hurtful names like Kali or Kalia are common taunts, and this saw an entire generation of young children grow up believing that they are not good enough because of the color of their skin and had to suffer immense trauma. Psychologists say that people who face color biases are more likely to develop hypertension, psychological distress, and other health-related issues. And the reason is they internalize their shame, anxiety, and fear, which may then manifest in cognitive or physical stress, say doctors. So, what do we need to do about it? There are growing movements that go by the hashtag dark is divine and brown is beautiful. Many companies have come up with exclusive makeup for the darker Indian skin tone. Others are even advocating what they call skin neutrality, or treating the skin as just another organ and not drawing attention to it at all. Many celebrities, including Alia Bhatt, have been posting selfies free of makeup, filters, and touch-ups to show that they too have blemishes and have far from perfect skins. Now, researcher Radhika Parameshwaran, whom I quoted earlier, believes that campaigns by celebrities against color discrimination can only be a start. These, she says, do not go deep into the caste and class consciousness of the Indian psyche. Radhika believes that sensitization needs to start early in elementary school itself. Each of us need to deeply introspect on this ingrained bias, change our mindsets, and get rid of prejudices. And that should start with our children. To end, I was moved by the way Sharada Muralidharan, the bureaucrat, ended her now famous Facebook post with how it was her children who helped overcome her own diffidence about her color. As she wrote, "Till my children who gloried in their black heritage, who kept finding beauty where I noticed none, who thought that black was awesome, who helped me see that black is beautiful, that black is gorgeousness, that I dig black." That is a powerful message for all of us to change our mindsets and prejudices against skin complexion. And for a more in-depth perspective, do read the latest India Today cover story on the issue. Thank you for being with me in this episode of Nothing But the Truth. I look forward to having you with me next week. Nothing But the Truth.